young people to have mentors to know to turn to in writing.
Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Gabriel Deji, the author of The Escape, A Tale of Change and Revolution, and today we're shooting my first solo video. It's going to be based on a Q&A. I've had some questions since the book came out, so I've picked a couple of them. I did an Instagram question story a few weeks ago, so I've picked some questions from that. And I'll also start off, before we get into the questions, just speaking a bit about the book, because apart from my interviews on ITV News and BBC Radio London and a couple of Instagram lives and different conversations, I haven't spoken about the book in depth by myself. Partially, as all authors do, I do wish to allow people to get to their own conclusions on the novel and to get their own ideas of it. But I thought today would be good for me to speak about it by myself. So please, I hope you enjoy this video. Give me feedback and tell me what you think. So, first of all, The Escape, A Tale of Change and Revolution. We can start off with the title of the book. The Escape is a story about escapism, because we have a young delinquent, Ramel Brathwaite, who you can see right here. He's in a life of delinquency, he's in a life of trouble, and he has a masked stranger called King Keys, the perpetually pensive poet, who brings him forward to a better life, a life of activism, and we'll get to activism in a second. But the idea of escape is really important to the novel, because not only is there the general escapism of Ramel escaping the life of trouble that he was in, but there's also little moments of escape. So towards the end of the novel, he is in an institute and he's able to escape from that institute because that institute is restricting him. He's able to find liberty from that escape. So I guess the idea of escapism and liberty are quite intertwined. But even further from that, there's the idea of escaping from destiny, because there's the Bible verse, Jeremiah 29 verse 11, which appears in the book reoccurringly, and it talks about the idea of destiny that troubles Ramel, because he's not really on a good life, and to feel that there's even something else that is controlling him, that he has a destiny which he can't escape from, is troubling for him. So there's the idea of escapism in that sense as well. So the idea of free will is linked to activism, because in the end he's able to find his own way through activism, which is why activism is linked to an escape from that destiny and that free will. Which is why the novel is called A Tale of Change and Revolution, because there is the idea of revolution, which is the activism, and that is what is linked to his escapism. And there's also the idea of change, and this is something that I've spoken about quite deeply. I've been a member of the Enfield Youth Parliament, I've been a member of the Enfield Youth Cabinet, and I work with the community, so the idea of mentorship is really important, which is, I guess, what change represents. In order to make change, you need mentors in society. You need figures who can steer our young people into the right direction, give them guidance, especially when we're in troubled neighbourhoods, troubled circumstances where we have problems like knife crime, where we have problems such as child trafficking with county lines, exploitation. You're going to need a sense of guidance in order to bring people on the correct direction. You can't tell young people not to do things if you aren't giving them the equipment or just the motivation to do the right thing. Because a lot of the time these people do have some sort of mental issues. I know that's not a word or a term that is spoken about deeply enough, but the idea of mentorship and mental illness and mental problems is really important, because a lot of these young people do have a lot of undiagnosed problems. They are troubled within themselves. So we can speak more about the book now. Not only is there the idea of social activism, there are many other themes in the book, such as multiculturalism. You'll see that me, as the author of The Escape, I typically wear very cultural clothing. I'm representing my background. I'm from Benin Republic in the west of Africa, which is why you always see me in clothes that are from my background, and the idea of multiculturalism is really important to the book. With every character, when their introduction comes in, they'll tell you a bit about where that character comes from, in terms of their nationality, in terms of their heritage, and it will be really important to the way that they speak. So yeah, the idea of multiculturalism was important to the novel to show the diversity of the environment that they come from, but the environment that they come from, to me, is also, I've taken it from my environment. I live in London, and London is a very multicultural society, and that is something very beautiful about London. So I decided to put that in the book, make sure it is heavily represented. And there's also the idea of music. I know I'm hopping from topic to topic, but The Escape is a novel that has many topics. It's a very multifaceted book, which is why it's like it switches from subject to subject, and that's what you'll see through my explanation of it. So the idea of music, it comes across very early on in the novel. As soon as King Keys, the perpetually pensive poet, arrives, you can hear the music, you can see the repetition of the description of traditional Afrobeat and jazz, which he plays, and that's what soothes the environment. Whilst they're fighting, he plays and he creates peace everywhere he goes in moments of discord. But music in the novel is not solely used to create peace. Music in the novel is also used to, is used as a tool of revolution. The Escape, a tale of change and revolution. So music is really important to that revolting theme, because at the end of the novel they're in a situation, or they're in an event. It's called the Changemakers event, and in that event they use music as a form of protest. They're using music to fight against elitism. They're using music to fight against the people who are controlling the society. So yes, the music is used as a very dual factor. It can be used to create peace, but it can also be used to create discord, to create revolt, and that's really important to the way the novel has been written. And there's also, again, I'll return to the theme of free will, because when I speak about free will, when I spoke about free will initially, it was about independently how the characters are able to find free will within themselves, but there's also a grander sense of free will, in the sense that us in society, we are being controlled, in a sense, by the uppers, the leaders, those in power. So in order to create change in society, we do need to use our free will and stop being led by these people in charge. And I'll even read an extract from the book to explain further this idea. So this is towards the end of The Escape, at the Changemakers event. We're living in a war where the soldiers know to fight but don't know what for. Most of us just fight for the glory, gold and glitter, whereas a small few can see the bigger picture. We wield a mixture of strong souls and oppressed voices. My choice is to whisper the news. The revolution will not be televised. The solution is in the sound, and our enemies will leave you mesmerised by the lights and the action. The audience struggled to understand exactly what Ramel was talking about. The trickle of sweat that had appeared before his speech had travelled down his face. The arrogance in his expression began to fade and was replaced by inexplicable anger, which he made sure to direct at the camera. Statistics have repeatedly shown us that advancements in technology have caused people to lose their social skills to the point where some can barely hold face-to-face conversations with each other. Isn't this terrible? What if I told you that all of this was part of a darker, more serious issue? Phones, tablets, televisions and computers are a means of hypnotism that the big corporations are using to confuse us and influence our way of life for their own selfish gain. You think I sound stupid? Tell that to the politicians who have won their elections by filling your computer screens with targeted ads. Tell that to all the kids who change the way they talk, act, dance or text every month based on the social trends that they see online. Tell that to the celebrities who have been pushed forward to the forefront of the media to promote different ideas that the higher-ups are implementing into society. So that was taken from chapter 25, page 114 of The Escape. So you can read that, but please, if you haven't read the book already, make sure you read it from beginning to end, and that will contextualize that chapter for you. That was a really important chapter, and I've spoken about this before on my YouTube channel as well, in my interview with Haja Zubairu, the president of Bristol's Afro-Caribbean Society. We spoke about technological determinism, which is an idea that was put forward by Karl Marx, the socialist thinker, where he speaks about free will and activism and he puts them together. But now we're going to get into the questions that have been given to me about the novel. So the first question is, who inspired you to create these characters, especially King Keys? So I'll start off by saying, King Keys, first of all, there are many things that made King Keys who he was. I think the idea just of mentorship, the idea of poetry, of music, and all these things, all these complicated little features that make up King Keys, of mystery, I think those all came together for me and that made these characters. I've said this before, I had made King Keys far before the novel had been written. To me, he was just a figure. I'm interested in music. King Keys is also a musical character, and I was hoping that King Keys would be a character in a conceptual album, but instead I wrote him as a character in a novel. So King Keys is a character that I had been thinking about creating for a long time, just to encapsulate the idea of activism and of mystery. And he is essentially, some people say he is like a black superhero. I would actually disagree with that. I would say he's not even a black superhero. He is a character that pushes people to do what they can do, to play their part in society. So he's not a superhero in the sense that superheroes act on behalf of other people. Superheroes fill a void where other people are incapable of acting. Whereas King Keys brings the potential out in people. He is a mentor figure who tells people that they should motivate themselves. He asks them to use their talents wisely. As you see in one of the chapters, he's in a youth offenders session and he's bringing out the potential of these characters. There are also other features of King Keys that I was really inspired to make. For example, one of my favourite artists, MF Doom. If you don't know MF Doom, you can listen to his music. He wears a mask, and I was really interested in that idea of separating the person from the mysterious figure through the use of a mask, and that is one of the reasons why King Keys looks the way he does. There are also many other features with music, with the artists that I'm interested in, that made King Keys the way he was. Then we can look at the other characters. So the other characters mainly came out just after I started writing the book. They weren't ones that I thought of in advance. So Ramel Brathwaite, to me, I wanted to create a character who you could see was a troubled person, a delinquent. However, Ramel Brathwaite, the reason why he existed in the novel was I wanted to show that there is even a special side to all these delinquents, all these kids that we see involved in trouble. They're not just mindless monsters as the news will try to portray to us. They are people with a background who come from like backgrounds just like many other people, but may have seen trouble within their lives, which has caused them to go into the path which they have come from, which is why is basically creating the idea that we can't give up hope in these young people, as King Keys didn't give up hope in Ramel himself. And we can see that Ramel has many gifts. He is interested in computer science, he's gifted in physics, and that's what leads him to be a multi-millionaire founder of his own technology company, which is named after the group Revolution, who appear near the end of the novel in the Changemakers Institute, the Changemakers event for the Changemakers charity. There are many other characters. I'm not going to break down all the other characters, but I'll just give a brief summary. So a lot of the delinquents, again, just to create the idea of delinquency, but to show that they come from a background that we can sympathise with, I guess. And yes, just to show the way characters are affected. There's also PC Connor. He is a troublesome figure in the novel. He is like, I guess you could kind of say he's one of the villains. Me as an author, while I was writing The Escape, I was influenced by The Matrix quite a lot. So you could say that PC Connor is a bit like Agent Smith from The Matrix. If you've watched The Matrix, you'd understand that metaphor. If you haven't, I urge you to go and watch The Matrix. It's a fantastic movie, and there are many other little gems that The Escape has taken proudly from The Matrix. So the next question is, who do I relate to most in the book? I don't think I relate to anyone. I would say that it was important for me as the author, even though you empathise and sympathise with the characters, you still distance yourself from them in the sense that I wrote the novel from a third person's perspective. I'm looking at all of them from afar, and I'm making my own current commentary on these fictional characters from an outside perspective, from a bird's eye view, you can say. So I wouldn't say I relate to any of the characters in the book particularly. I would say that I do have a melodica, which is the musical instrument which appears in the book over and over again. So in that sense, you could say that I relate to King Keys, the perpetually pensive poet. I write poetry myself, so I relate to him in that sense. But apart from that, I wouldn't say that I relate to any of the characters in my novel. So the next question, how did I know when the characters were enough? So what my answer to that would be, all the characters in The Escape were created out of necessity rather than out of my own. As I've said, I created King Keys before the novel was written, but he was the only one. So when I say that the characters were created out of necessity, what I mean by that is I wrote the novel, and it's as I wrote that these characters just appeared because they needed to. So it was never a question for me about whether the characters were enough, but it was mainly to me a question of what do I need to do here, and the characters just appeared in that sense. So yes, the characters were enough when the story was done, really. The characters appeared when they needed to, and they disappeared when they needed to. And yes, I guess that is something for anyone who's struggling on knowing how to craft their characters, on plan their novels. Sometimes I'd urge you to just write, and you'll know when the characters are enough when you finish writing. So the next question is, do I have plans to continue the King Keys story further? My answer to that would be, possibly. However, I wouldn't urge any of my viewers or any of my readers to expect any of those things soon. Do not hold your breath. However, King Keys, possibly he will reappear. I'll leave that in the open. The Escape is a novel of mystery, and King Keys is also a character of mystery, and his reappearance is also going to be a mysterious one. So I'll leave that there for you. How did I plan this story is the next question. The honest answer is I did not. I wrote the novel just out of a moment of inspiration. I continued to do so, and that is it. That's how the novel was written. I started off with a fight sequence. I was hearing a lot about knife crime. It was very prevalent in the media, which is very unfortunate. And I guess the environment, the things that you hear around you, especially on the news, are what's going to influence you as a creative. So me, I was influenced by that, and it wasn't supposed to be a political story, but as it went along, that just happened. It was really just edit as you go along, really. And the next question is, why is the incident at Rashan's house not heavily dwelled upon? So there's a moment in the novel where Rashan, one of the delinquents who is friends with Ramel, his house is burnt down, he's attacked by his brother, they have a big conflict within each other, and you can even see that moment at the back of The Escape. You can see this kind of burning house, this fight sequence happening here. And the honest answer is, it isn't heavily dwelled upon because the idea of the novel is escapism. They fly very often within the novel, and flying is used as a metaphor for escaping from the problems which hold you down. So it's not heavily dwelled upon because that is part of the idea of the escape. Ramel is able to escape from that situation. But there is also another question. So I've been asked this before, and another response that I gave was that so the question that I was asked was, why is it like almost game-like, in the sense that when you're playing a game, when you kill your characters, you kill them and you go on. There's no dwelling upon the emotional consequences. And the question that I was asked prior was, is that because these people's lives do not matter? And in a sense, I would say yes, not because their lives don't matter, but rather because these people by the media, they're not looked upon as people that have lives that we should sympathize with. They're looked upon as people whose lives are meaningless, they're monsters. We can't look at these people with any respect. So I guess that was kind of mirroring the way that they've been showed, and I think the readers kind of realised that in some sense, because even though they don't look at these people as people that we can't respect, they do sympathise with them. So I guess that is another reason why it's not dwelled upon heavily, because you're asking yourself, why do we not get to know more? Why do we not get to know more about the problems that these people are facing? And that's really important. So yes, that is the last question, and it's been really great for me to do this Q&A, for me to be able to speak to you about the themes of this novel. I do personally believe, not just because I'm the author of The Escape, but I do personally believe that The Escape is a really important book for our times. Social activism is a really prevalent theme right now. It's not just a book about mentorship, about knife crime. It's also a book about protest, and we're living in times of revolution. We're living in times where we're holding the people in charge accountable for their lack of disrespect for the people who are oppressed in society, which is also what the novel is about. It speaks about that, and in the end of the novel is also speaking about holding these people accountable. That's really important. So thank you for listening to this YouTube video. It's been amazing for me to be able to speak to you, and please carry on watching my videos. I'm going to do more videos like this. Make sure you tune in for any other videos in future and watch my past interviews. So thank you very much.